On the morning of my son's wedding, I woke up bald. My daughter-in-law had cut my hair in my sleep just to make sure I wouldn't outshine her mother. They had no clue I was sitting on a $2 million inheritance. I'm glad you're here. Stay with my story till the end and tell me which city you're watching from so I can see how far this goes. That morning, I woke up completely bald. For a few seconds, lying there in the dim light, I thought it had to be a nightmare. My hand shot to my head, expecting to feel the silver waves I'd cared for all these years. Instead, my palm met a bare, prickly scalp. The mirror confirmed it. 67 years old, and I'd never looked so defenseless. Scraggly patches of hair clung to my head, like someone had gone at me with scissors, or worse, while I slept. My reflection stared back hollow and strange. "Sable," I whispered, my voice cracking. She'd done this. She'd come into my room during the night and butchered my hair. The thought hit me so hard I doubled over the bathroom sink. I'd spent weeks at the salon getting ready for today, Griffin's wedding, the highlights, the careful style, the hope of feeling beautiful again after years of fading into the background. All ruined by one cruel move. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. "Griffin, I need you here right now." "Mom, it's 6 in the morning. The wedding isn't until your wife cut my hair off." The words came out broken and quiet. There was a long silence. When he finally spoke, his tone was sharp and irritated the way it's been for years. "What are you even talking about? She came into my room last night. She cut all my hair, Griffin. I'm bald." Another pause. "Mom, that sounds... Are you sure you didn't have some kind of episode?" "Maybe you should. I'm not having an episode." The words burst out desperate and raw. "Your wife attacked me in my sleep." An hour later, when Griffin showed up, Sable walked in right behind him like she owned the place, her blonde hair perfect and catching the morning light through my kitchen window. "Oh my goodness, Corinne," she said, covering her mouth like she was horrified. "What happened to your hair?" It was an Oscar-worthy act. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her. "You know exactly what happened," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sable's eyes went wide like she was shocked. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Griffin, your mother is accusing me of something awful." Griffin looked back and forth between us, his face tight with frustration. At 35, he had his father's weak chin and my stubbornness, but not the backbone to stand up to her. "Mom, this is nuts. Sable was with me all night. We stayed at the hotel, remember, for the rehearsal dinner. She could have come here after you fell asleep. Why would she even do something like that?" His voice had that patronizing edge I'd come to expect since she sank her manicured claws into him. I looked at her, trying to find even a flicker of the truth. "Because your mother-in-law didn't want me looking better than Maylis today." Sable gasped and clutched her chest. "Corinne, how could you say such a thing? I would never. You told me." Last week, Maylis was worried about the photos, afraid she'd look old next to the groom's family. "I was just making conversation." Sable's voice cracked at just the right pitch, like she was the wounded one. "I can't believe you'd twist my words like this." Griffin moved closer to her, slipping his arm around her waist, and the sight of it cut me like a knife. "Mom, you need to apologize. Right now. Apologize." The word barely came out. "Griffin, look at me. Really look at me." He glanced at my bare scalp and then looked away just as fast. "Maybe you should see a doctor. Hair loss can mean stress, or it didn't fall out, it was cut. You're being paranoid, Mom, and honestly, it's embarrassing." Embarrassing, the word hit my gut like a punch. My own son thought my pain was embarrassing. Sable edged closer to Griffin, her tone soft and reasonable. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding. Give Corinne time to get help." "No," the word shot out of me louder than I expected. "Don't you dare postpone this wedding because of what you did to me, what I allegedly did." Sable corrected, her smile perfectly steady. I looked at my son, searching his face for even a trace of the little boy who used to climb into my bed during storms. "You really believe her over me?" "I believe what makes sense, Mom. And this doesn't make sense." The silence after that felt like a funeral. Standing there in my kitchen staring at my bald reflection in the toaster, I understood something had permanently changed. I wasn't Griffin's mother in any way that counted anymore. I was just a hassle, a problem to handle. "I need to find something to cover my head," I finally said. Sable's smile brightened. "Oh, I saw a cute little wig shop downtown, very affordable." The word affordable hung there like a slap coming from a woman who spent more on her hair each month than most families spent on food as they left. Griffin paused at the door. "Mom, please don't make a scene today. This day isn't about you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak after the door shut. I sank into my favorite chair and let the tears fall, hot, angry tears that had been building. For 3 years, this day wasn't about me. Apparently, no day was about me anymore. The cheap wig itched like crazy, but it was better than nothing. I'd gone to 3 different stores before finding one that didn't make me look like a Halloween prop. Even so, the fake auburn hair felt awkward and obvious under the chapel lights. Sitting in the 3rd row, not the 1st row, like a mother of the groom should, I watched Maylee's command the front row. Her silver hair styled perfectly, her navy dress fitted just right. She looked elegant, distinguished, everything I should have looked like on my son's wedding day. "Doesn't Maylee's look wonderful?" the woman next to me whispered. "So refined." I nodded and smiled like I'd learned to do these last 3 years. Always smile, always agree, never cause trouble. The truth was, this humiliation had been building since the day Griffin announced his engagement. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I remembered that first dinner when Sable brought her parents to meet me. I spent 2 days cleaning my little house until it shone, cooking Griffin's favorite pot roast when they arrived. Maylee's walked through my living room like she was touring a sad little museum. "How quaint," she said, studying my handmade curtains. "It's so nice when people make do with what they have." Sable laughed, that tinkling sound that grated on me. "Mom, not everyone can afford a decorator." Even then, Griffin said nothing. He just sat there eating my pot roast while his future in-laws quietly judged everything. I didn't have the secret. They didn't know the secret. No one knew, burned in my chest like fire. $2 million. That's what my sister Zephora left me when she passed 2 years ago. Zephora, who never married, never had kids, who built a small fortune through smart investments and her accounting business. "Promise me you won't tell anyone right away," she whispered from her hospital bed. "Watch how people treat you when they think you have nothing. That's how you'll know who really loves you." I kept that promise, even when it meant putting up with Sable's little digs. Even when Griffin started treating me like a burden instead of his mother. The wedding march started, and I watched my son's face light up as Sable walked down the aisle. He looked at her like she was everything good in this world, the same way he used to look at me when he was little, and I was his whole universe. After his father passed, it was just the 2 of us against everything. Griffin was 8, confused and furious, and I juggled 3 jobs to keep us going. I cleaned offices at night, worked catering gigs on weekends, and did data entry during the day while he was in school. Every cent went toward his future piano lessons, summer camps, college savings. "You're the best mom in the world," he used to tell me that when I collapsed into bed at midnight, only to wake up 4 hours later to do it all again. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being the best mom in the world. I became the embarrassing mom who worked too much, who couldn't afford the fancy things other parents bought, who showed up at school events still wearing her work uniform. "She means well," I overheard him tell a friend once in high school. "She just doesn't really understand how things work." That stung, but I convinced myself it was just teenage awkwardness. He'd grow out of it, but he never did. Now, as I watched him vow to love and cherish Sable, I wondered when I'd actually lost him. Was it when I couldn't pay for the senior trip to Europe? When I asked him to get a job to help with college? When I chose sensible Christmas gifts instead of the flashy gadgets his friends got? Or had I simply loved him so much, sacrificed so much, that I erased myself completely? "The bride looks absolutely radiant," Maylee's announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're so blessed to have such a perfect daughter." The way she stressed perfect daughter wasn't lost on me or anyone else. At the reception, I ended up at a table in the back, seated with distant cousins and people I barely knew. Sable had insisted on it, saying I'd be more comfortable with folks my own age. Turns out, they were actually lovely. Ira, Griffin's 3rd grade teacher, remembered how proud I'd been at every school event. "You never missed anything," she said warmly. "You were always there cheering him on." "That was a long time ago," I said, watching Griffin dance with his bride. "Not so long," Ira replied. "I remember you working double shifts and still showing up at a science fair. That's real love." But I was learning that real love didn't guarantee anything. It didn't guarantee respect. When the speeches started, Griffin poured out thanks to Sable's parents. He spoke about Maylee's wisdom and kindness, how welcomed they'd made him feel. He talked about his new father-in-law's generosity and business advice, but he never mentioned me. Not once in his entire speech did my son acknowledge the woman who raised him alone, gave up everything for his happiness, who drove here today wearing a cheap wig because his wife had ruined the only thing I allowed myself to feel pretty about. When the applause faded, I slipped away to the bathroom. In the mirror, under the harsh lights, my fake hair looked even faker. The woman staring back was a stranger, beaten down, invisible, forgotten. But as I adjusted the wig, I caught sight of something else in the glass, something I hadn't seen in years. Anger, clean, sharp anger that sliced right through the pain. I had $2 million sitting quietly in a bank account that no one knew about. I had choices they couldn't even dream of, and for the first time in 3 years, I was ready to start making them. The question wasn't whether my family loved me. The question was whether I was finally ready to stop begging them to. The moment came during the cake cutting. I was standing by the dessert table trying to disappear into the background when Sable's laugh cut through the crowd. She was holding court at the head table, entertaining a group of guests with what seemed to be a hilarious story. "Oh, you should have seen her this morning," Sable was saying. Her voice had that certain tone that made my skin crawl. Griffin's poor mother was apparently convinced I had sneaked into her house and cut off all her hair while she slept. The whole group burst out laughing at her. Someone gasped, "She actually accused you." "Can you imagine?" Sable went on, pressing her hand over her heart like she was shocked. "The poor thing is getting so paranoid. We're really concerned about her mental health." I felt the color drain from my face. She was actually telling them. She was standing there in front of the wedding guests, making me look like some delusional old woman. "Age can be so cruel," when Afraid chimed in, shaking her perfectly styled head. "Some people just can't handle getting older gracefully." "Exactly," Sable said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "We've been trying to be patient, but honestly, it's becoming such a burden on Griffin. He's too sweet to say anything, but I can see how much stress his mother's behavior is putting on him." Ira, who had been standing nearby, gasped quietly. "That's terrible," she whispered. "How can she say such things?" But I stood frozen, watching my son's new wife systematically tear down my reputation in front of people I'd known for years. People who had seen me raise Griffin, who knew what I'd sacrificed. Now hearing that I was a paranoid burden. "We've actually been talking about it," Sable added, lowering her voice to a whisper that somehow carried even farther. "We think it might be time for Corinne to consider assisted living. Somewhere she can get the care she needs." Assisted living. Those words hit me like a slap. "That's probably for the best," someone said. My aunt went through the same thing. Started making wild accusations, forgetting things. It was so hard on the family, I couldn't even breathe. This woman, this cruel, calculated woman, was rewriting my entire life, turning me into a problem to be fixed, a burden to be handled. And where was Griffin, while his wife shredded his mother's dignity, one lie at a time? Laughing with his groomsmen just 20 feet away, completely clueless. Ira touched my arm gently. "Corinne, are you okay? You look so pale." Before I could answer, Sable's voice rose again. "Oh, there she is now. Corinne," she called out to me, waving with that bright smile that never reached her eyes. "We were just talking about you." I walked over on legs that felt like water. The group turned to look at me and I saw it on their faces, pity mixed with discomfort. They were looking at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sable was just telling us about your morning," one of the women said kindly. "How are you feeling, dear?" The question was thick with false concern, the tone you'd use with a confused child. These people I'd known for years were now speaking to me like I was fragile and broken. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Of course you are," Sable said, stepping closer and putting her hand on my arm in a way that looked supportive but felt like a grip. "We're all here for you, Corinne. That's what family is for." Family, the word was bitter in my mouth. Actually, Sable kept going, her voice now bright and helpful in that way that made my skin crawl. "Griffin and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to step back a little. You know, focus on yourself. Maybe it's time to retire from trying to run everyone else's lives." The group murmured in agreement. Retire from managing everyone else's lives, as if I'd been some meddling mother-in-law instead of a woman who raised her son alone and asked for nothing but respect in return. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked. My voice was barely steady. "Well," Sable said, glancing around the group like she was looking for backup, "we think you should start finding your own way, your own hobbies. Maybe it's time to stop leaning on Griffin for your social life and emotional needs, depending on Griffin." The accusation was so backward, so completely wrong, I almost laughed. I hadn't leaned on Griffin for anything in years. If anything, he still called me when he needed advice, when his car broke down, when he and Sable fought. "You think I depend on my son?" I asked. "Oh, sweetie," Maylis cut in, her voice sweet with fake kindness. "It's really common for widowed mothers to get overly attached to their kids. It's not your fault, but it's not healthy either. Overly attached to the child I raised alone, to the son I worked 3 jobs to support, to the boy who used to tell me I was his best friend. Exactly, Sable said, getting more confident. Griffin needs space to build his own family now. It's not fair to weigh him down with constant drama and accusations. The word burden hit me like a punch. After everything I'd given up, everything I'd sacrificed, I was being called a burden by a woman who'd known my son for 3 years. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said, my voice stronger now. I never accused anyone of anything that wasn't true. Sable's smile flickered for just a second. So quick I almost didn't catch it, but then it was back, brighter than ever. Of course, dear, she said. But you have to understand how it sounded, how it made Griffin feel to have his new wife accused of something so bizarre. Bizarre. The word came out louder than I meant. A few people nearby turned and stared. Corinne Maylis said sharply, "You're making a scene, at my own son's wedding, for standing up for myself against lies." I looked around at the group, at faces I'd known for decades, and all I saw was discomfort and pity. They believed her. Every carefully crafted word, they believed. "You're right," I said at last. "I think it is time for me to step back." Sable's smile was victorious. "I'm so glad you understand. We all want what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone. Everyone except me, apparently." I excused myself and walked to the parking lot, my cheap wig sliding in the humid air. Behind me I could hear the party still going strong. The laughter and music carried on like nothing had happened, like I'd never been there at all. Sitting in my car, still wearing that itchy wig covering my humiliation, I made a choice. Sable was right about one thing. It was time for me to step back, but not the way she thought. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old money. Cyrus Bell had been Zephyr's lawyer for 15 years, and when I called him the Monday after the wedding, he made time for me right away. "I need to make some changes to my will," I told him, sitting across from his big mahogany desk in my best dress. Not the mother-of-the-groom outfit I'd picked out and never really got to wear, of course, Mrs. Patterson. "What kind of changes are we talking about?" I pulled out the manila folder I'd put together. Inside were copies of everything. The original, will leaving everything to Griffin. My bank statements showing the inheritance from Zephora, and a new plan I drafted in my own careful handwriting. I said calmly that I wanted to take my son off as beneficiary. Quentin's eyebrows lifted a bit, but his face stayed politely neutral. "That's absolutely your right. May I ask what led to this choice?" "Let's just say my family has shown me they don't care to have me around." He nodded and jotted something down. "And who would you like to name as your new beneficiary?" I'd spent 3 sleepless nights thinking this through. "I want to set up a scholarship for single mothers studying to become nurses." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd worked as a nurse's aide for 12 years, one of 3 jobs I held while raising Griffin. It was honest work, and I'd always wished I'd had the time and money to get my RN degree. "That's a beautiful legacy," Quentin said. "We can certainly make that happen. Any provisions for your family?" "None." He made another note. "Mrs. Patterson, I have to ask if anyone's pressuring you into this decision. Are you under any duress?" I almost laughed. If anything, I finally felt free of pressure. No duress, just clarity. The next thing on my list was tougher. I drove over to Timberline Realty, where Sylvie Dowling had worked for 20 years. She'd sold me my house when Griffin was 10, and I trusted her to keep things quiet. "Corinne," she said warmly when I walked in, "how was the wedding?" I heard it was lovely. Beautiful. Yes, I suppose it was if you ignored the character assassination and public humiliation. "It was lovely," I said. "Sylvie, I need to talk to you about selling my house." Her smile faded. "Selling? But you've put so much love into that house. You've worked so hard on it." I had loved it. For 15 years, every weekend I'd poured myself into that little 2-bedroom home. The garden I'd tended, the kitchen I'd renovated, penny by penny. The living room where Griffin did homework while I sat at the kitchen table finishing my night shift paperwork. "I'm ready for something new," I said. "Well, the market's good right now. Are you downsizing? There are some great senior communities. Actually, I'm thinking about moving out of state." Sylvie blinked. "Out of state? Where to?" "Oregon. My cousin's in Vermont. She's been inviting me for years." That was true. Greer, my mother's sister's daughter, and I had kept in touch through Christmas cards and the occasional phone call. When I called her yesterday, she'd been thrilled. You should come for a long visit, she said. I have a great community here. Active seniors, book clubs, hiking groups. You'd love it. I might have to make it permanent, I told her. Even better. I've got a guest room for you, as long as you need it. Sylvie was still staring at me. Corian, this feels very sudden. Are you sure you're not rushing into this? Maybe you should talk to Griffin first. Griffin made it clear at his wedding that he thinks I should find my own way and stop relying on him, I said. I'm just following his advice. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved quietly and efficiently. I donated most of my furniture to charity, keeping only what truly mattered: my mother's china, Zephyrus jewelry, the photo albums of Griffin's childhood. I didn't tell anyone what I was up to. Not Griffin, not the neighbors, not the women in my book club. I just went about it with the steady focus I'd honed through years of handling crisis after crisis on my own. The hardest part was the storage unit. I rented a little space across town and filled it with boxes of Griffin's childhood memories, his report cards, art projects, the Mother's Day cards he made me in grade school with construction paper and crayons. You're the best mom ever. One card read in his 6-year-old handwriting, I love you to the moon and back. I packed it all up carefully, just in case someday he wanted to remember who I used to be to him. The phone call started 2 weeks after the wedding. At first it was just Griffin calling to check in, his voice carrying that faint, guilty edge, like Sable had probably said something about him neglecting his mom. Hey mom, just wanted to see how you were doing. I'm fine, sweetheart. How's married life? Great, great. Sable's amazing. We're really happy. I'm glad. Are you doing anything fun? Getting out at all? The question was loaded, echoing what we'd talked about last time. Was I finally building my own life like Sable suggested? Learning to be more independent? Actually, yes, I answered. I've been pretty busy. Oh good. What kind of stuff? Just taking care of some things I've put off. It wasn't a lie. I really had put off living my own life for decades. The second call came when the house hit the market. Sylvie must have told someone because Griffin's voice was sharp, confused. Mom, what's this about you selling the house? Sylvie, Dowling, called Sable and said you'd listed it. I'm making some changes, I said calmly. What kind of changes? You didn't say anything about selling. You're right. I didn't mention it. I'm learning to make my own decisions without burdening you with the details. He hesitated. Burdening me? Mom, what are you talking about? Sable made it clear at your wedding that I needed to stop depending on you and find my own path. That's exactly what I'm doing. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I cut in gently. I heard her just fine, and she was right. It's time for me to build my own life. But selling the house seems extreme. Where are you going to live? I have options. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, you're worrying me. This doesn't sound like you. He was right. It didn't. The old me would have asked permission, sought his approval, made sure my choices fit neatly into his schedule. But the old me had also believed love and sacrifice would earn me respect and kindness. The old me had been wrong about a lot. I'm fine, Griffin. Better than fine, actually. I'm excited about this new chapter. New chapter. Mom, what aren't you telling me? Everything, I thought. I'm not telling you that your wife is cruel and manipulative. I'm not telling you your wedding was the most humiliating day of my life. I'm not telling you I have more than enough money to vanish if I want to. I'm not telling you any of it because you don't need to manage my life, I said instead. Isn't that what you wanted? The call ended with polite promises to talk soon, but I heard the confusion in his voice. Good. Let him wonder. Let him question whether he really knew his mother at all. Because the truth was, I was just beginning to know myself. They showed up on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after I'd put the house up for sale. I was in the kitchen, carefully packing my mother's china, when I heard Griffin's key turn. In the front door, he still had a key. Of course he did. I'd given it to him when he was 16, and never thought to ask for it back. Even after he made it clear I was no longer a priority. Mom, he called out. We need to talk. My stomach tightened as I heard Sable's voice float in. Maureen, where are you? I dried my hands on a dish towel and walked to the living room, where they stood among my boxers like invaders surveying conquered ground. Sable was done up as always, in a cream sweater that probably cost more than my grocery budget, designer, jeans, and those ridiculously expensive boots she loved to show off online. Hello Griffin, I kept my tone even. Sable, what brings you here? What brings us here? Griffin motioned to the boxes stacked all over the room. Mom, this is crazy. You can't just sell your house and vanish without talking to us. I'm not vanishing. I'm moving. Where Sable stepped closer, her voice dripping with that fake concern that always made my skin crawl. We're worried about you, Corinne. This kind of impulsive behavior isn't like you. Impulsive, like I hadn't spent 3 weeks planning every last detail. I'm moving to Vermont to be near my cousin Greer. Griffin frowned. Greer? I barely even remember her. You haven't talked to her in years. We've kept in touch more than you think. But why Vermont? Sable pressed. It's so far away. And with your episodes, don't you think you should stay closer to family? Episodes? There it was again. A word meant to make me sound unstable, unreliable. I don't have episodes, Sable. Well, no, of course not, she rushed to say. I just meant, the confusion at the wedding, the accusations. Griffin shifted, looking uncomfortable. Mom, about that. About what? I asked. About your wife cutting my hair, or about her telling everyone at the reception that I was losing my mind. Sable's flawless makeup couldn't hide the flicker of panic in her eyes. I never said you were losing your mind. I was just worried about you. That's all. You told a group of wedding guests I needed assisted living. Bafna, she stopped, collected herself. I think you misunderstood what was said. I understand perfectly. I walked over to the mantel and picked up a framed photo of Griffin's college graduation. I understand you see me as a problem to manage. A burden on your marriage. Mom. That's not true, Griffin said. But his voice didn't sound convincing. Is it? I turned to face them both. When was the last time you called me just to talk, Griffin? Not because you needed something. Not because Sable reminded you to check on your poor, lonely mother, but because you actually wanted to hear my voice. His mouth opened, then shut again. Exactly. I placed the photo in a box. You've made it clear I'm not welcome in your life as anything more than a responsibility, so I'm taking that responsibility away. You're being dramatic, Sable said, her voice sharper now. We never said you weren't welcome. You told me to find my own path and stop relying on Griffin. That's exactly what I'm doing. I meant you should find hobbies. Sable's cool exterior was starting to crack. Join a book club. Start gardening. Make some friends your own age. I didn't mean you should run off to another state like some rebellious teenager. I'm 67, Sable. I don't need your permission to make choices about my own life. Griffin stepped between us. Okay, let's all just calm down. Mom, I think this is just one big misunderstanding. We don't want you to move away. We want you to be part of our family. What family? The words came out sharper than I intended. The family that put me in the back row at your wedding. The family that didn't mention me in the groom's speech. The family that thinks I'm so unhinged I'd cut my own hair and blame it on someone else. I never said I thought you cut your own hair, Griffin mumbled. You didn't have to say it. You believed her without even thinking I might be telling the truth. Sable crossed her arms. Because your story didn't make sense, Corinne. Why would I do something that cruel? Because you didn't want me looking better than your mother in the wedding pictures. That's ridiculous. Is it? You told me yourself Maylis was nervous about looking old next to the groom's family. I was just making conversation. No, I said quietly. You were gathering information. You were figuring out what weaknesses you could use against me. The silence after that was crushing. Griffin glanced between us like he was watching a tennis match, his face drained and confused. This is exactly what I mean. Sable finally said, these paranoid accusations, it's not healthy. Corinne, you know what's not healthy. I set down the box I was carrying and looked her square in the eye. 35 years of putting my sons first in everything, only to be treated like some kind of shame at his wedding. 30-5 years of working multiple jobs and giving up everything so he could have chances I never did, only to be told I'm a burden on his marriage. Mom, Griffin said softly, 30 years of love and devotion, I went on, my voice getting steadier, only to find out it means nothing compared to 3 years of manipulation from a woman who sees me as competition for her husband's attention. I don't see you as competition, Sable said, but her tone was too sharp, too defensive. Don't you? Then why did you need to ruin how I looked on your wedding day? Why did you feel the need to humiliate me in front of people I've known for decades? Why did you make sure everyone saw me as the crazy mother-in-law instead of the woman who raised the man you say you love? Sable's facade cracked completely. Because you are the crazy mother-in-law. You're possessive and jealous, and you can't handle that Griffin doesn't need you anymore." The truth hung between us like an electric wire. "There it is," I said, quietly. "Finally, the real Sable." Griffin stared at his wife in shock. "Sable, what the hell?" "Oh, don't act shocked," she shot back. "You complain about her all the time. How she calls too much, how she treats you like a kid, how she makes everything about herself." "I never said," "You said all of it. Every time she annoyed you, you came home and ranted to me about it. You're just too much of a coward to say it to her face." Something inside me broke. Not my heart, that had been breaking for years. Something deeper, the final thread tying me to the boy I'd raised. The boy who once defended me against the world. "I see," I said quietly. Griffin's face fell. "Yes, you did." I picked up another box, surprised at how steady my hands were. "And you know what? You're right. I have been possessive. I have been jealous. Because for 35 years, you were the center of my whole world, and I couldn't accept that I wasn't the center of yours anymore." I looked at both of them, my son, who couldn't meet my eyes, and his wife, practically shaking with self-righteous anger. "But I accept it now. So here's what's going to happen. I'm moving to Vermont next week. I'm starting a new life with people who actually want me there. And you too can build your perfect little family without the hassle of me." "Mom, please," Griffin said. "We can work this out." "No, we can't. Because this isn't a misunderstanding. Griffin, this is who you are now. And I finally get that no amount of love from me is going to change that." I walked to the front door and opened it. "I think you should go now." They didn't move at first. Then Sable grabbed Griffin's arm and dragged him toward the door. "Fine," she said, "but don't expect us to come running when you figure out you made a mistake." After they left, I sat among my packed boxers and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. The worst had already happened. The pretending was done, and I was still here. In fact, for the first time in decades, I felt like I could really breathe. 6 months later, after leaving everything behind, I stood in my new kitchen in Vermont, watching the rain paint streaks on the window while fresh coffee brewed. My hair had grown back, silver and soft, styled exactly how I wanted. Nobody had touched it except my new hairdresser, a kind woman named Azura, who never asked pushy questions about my past. Greer had been right about this place. In just a month, I'd joined a seniors hiking group, a book club that met at the neighborhood coffee shop, and started volunteering at the children's hospital. For the first time as an adult, I was living for me. Griffin's letter was still sitting unopened on my kitchen counter. It had arrived yesterday, forwarded from my old address. His third try since I left. The first 2 had been calls I let roll to voicemail, messages full of confusion and hurt that I listened to once and then deleted. Back then, I wasn't ready. Today, I thought maybe I was. "Dear Mom," it started, in his familiar handwriting. "I've been trying to reach you for months. I know you're angry and I know we hurt you. I'm writing because I need you to know that Sable and I are having problems." I set the letter down and poured some coffee, adding real cream, the kind I never bought when money was tight. Outside the window, I watched Mrs. Leckler next door tending her garden. She'd invited me over for dinner tomorrow just because she liked having me around. I picked the letter back up. "She's been different since you left. Colder, more controlling. Yesterday she told me I had to choose between you and staying married. To her she said if I contacted you, that meant I was choosing you over her." I almost smiled. Griffin was finally starting to see through Sable's act too. "I keep thinking about what she said that day at your house. About me complaining about you. The truth is, I did say those things. When I was tired or frustrated, I'd vent to her about little things that bothered me at the time. But I never meant for her to twist them and use them against you. Too little, too late, I thought. But I kept going. I've been thinking about when I was a kid after Dad died. Do you remember that night when I thought there was a monster under my bed? You didn't just say there was nothing there. You grabbed a flashlight and checked every corner with me. Then you made me monster spray with water and lavender. And you said, as long as I had that, no monster could hurt me." I remembered. He'd been 8, trying so hard not to cry while we searched his room together. I realized something. "Mom, you were my monster spray for 18 years. Every time life felt scary or unfair, you made it safe again. And instead of being grateful, I grew up resenting you for it. I thought it meant I was weak, that I needed you to protect me. I didn't understand it meant I was loved." My eyes blurred with tears, but I kept reading. "Sable never had that. Her parents were cold and distant. She doesn't understand what we had, so she called it unhealthy. And I was stupid enough to believe her. I walked into the living room and sat in my favorite chair, a soft blue recliner I bought just because I liked it, not because it matched anything. The light outside was fading and I could hear Greer humming in her garden. I miss you, Mom. Not just because things are bad with Sable, but because I finally get what I lost when I chose to believe her over you. I lost the one person who loved me no matter what. The one who always saw the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it. The phone rang, pulling me out of the moment. Greer's name showed up on the caller ID. Corinne, dear, are you free for dinner tonight instead of tomorrow? My nephew's visiting from Seattle and I thought you might enjoy meeting him. He's a widower about your age and loves to read. I smiled. Greer had been trying to match me with all sorts of eligible men since I got here, convinced that a little romance would complete my fresh start. She didn't get that. After decades of living for everyone else, I was finally enjoying the freedom of living just for me. That sounds lovely, I said, surprising myself. What time? After hanging up, I went back to Griffin's letter. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway, because I can't stand the thought of living the rest of my life without my mother. I folded the letter neatly and set it aside. Then I walked to my desk and grabbed a sheet of my own stationery, cream-colored with my new address embossed at the top. Dear Griffin, I wrote, thank you for your letter. It means more than you know to hear you acknowledge the mistakes that were made. I paused, thinking about what I really wanted to say, how much of myself I was willing to share. I need you to understand something. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because loving you was destroying me. For too many years, I put you at the center of my world while I faded into the background. That wasn't good for either of us. The words came easier than I expected. I've built a new life here. I have friends who appreciate me, things I enjoy, and for the first time in decades, I'm living for me. I won't give that up, even for you. I thought about mentioning the money, the inheritance that made this possible, but some secrets are worth keeping. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it'll have to be on new terms. I won't be the mother who sacrifices everything for her kids' happiness. I won't be the grandma who babysits on demand, or the emergency contact who drops everything when you call. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the evening light made everything golden. But if you want a mom who's found her strength, who can love without losing herself, then maybe we can figure something out. I sealed the letter and set it by my purse to mail in the morning. Then I got ready for dinner with Greer and her nephew. At the restaurant, I found myself sitting across from Bram, a retired teacher with kind eyes and an easy laugh. He shared funny stories about his students, asked thoughtful questions about my move to Vermont, and never once made me feel like I had to justify anything. Greer tells me you're quite the hiker, he said over dessert. I've been looking for someone to tackle some of the tougher trails with. Most of my friends think I'm too old for adventure. I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. I'm just realizing I'm braver than I thought. Walking home later, I felt a lightness I hadn't known since I was young, free of everyone else's expectations, needs, and disappointments. All of it was gone. My phone buzzed with a text. For a second, I thought it might be Griffin, but it was Azura from the hiking group. Trail conditions are perfect for tomorrow's hike. Can't wait to see you there. I texted back right away, wouldn't miss it for the world, and I meant it. This life I'd built, this world I'd claimed. I wouldn't miss a single second of it. Back in my quiet house, I made some tea and settled into my blue chair, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere across the country, Griffin was probably reading my letter, trying to make sense of the woman who'd replaced the mother he thought he knew. I hoped someday he would. I hoped he'd find the courage to build a life of his own instead of living under someone else's thumb. But whether he did or didn't, I'd be okay. For the first time, I was enough for myself, and that, I realized, was the most powerful thing of all. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains, soft and golden, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of dread pressing down before I even got out of bed. I lay there for a few minutes, just listening to the quiet of my little house in Vermont. No phones ringing with demands, no footsteps pacing outside my door, no sharp voices waiting to tell me what I'd done wrong. The rain from last night had washed the air clean, and when I finally got up and peeked outside, the sidewalks gleamed. Mrs. Leckler was already in her garden next door, waving to me as she snipped her roses. I made coffee, real coffee, dark and strong, and sat at the kitchen table with my mug, watching a couple of sparrows squabble on the fence. The letter from Griffin was still on the counter, right where I'd left it after sealing mine to him. For a long time I just stared at it, wondering if he'd read mine yet, wondering what he thought when he finally saw that his mother wasn't coming home, wasn't waiting to be invited back, wasn't holding her breath anymore. I didn't have the urge to call him. That surprised me. For so many years, my first thought in the morning had been about him. Was he okay? Did he need me? Had I done enough? Now, sipping my coffee, my first thought was, what trail are we hiking today? I dressed in my new hiking clothes, soft flannel, sturdy boots, a fleece vest that made me feel, strangely, more capable than I'd felt in decades. When I got to the meeting point by the trailhead, Azura was already there, stretching, her silver hair pulled back in a neat braid. "Well," she said when she saw me, her face breaking into that warm smile of hers, "you showed up." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. We hiked for 3 hours that morning, through a narrow canyon where the sun slanted in and lit up the moss on the rocks like green fire. The air smelled of pine and earth. Everyone in the group was chatting and laughing and calling out to each other when someone stumbled. I barely noticed the time passing. My legs ached when we finished, but it was the good kind of ache, the kind of that makes you feel alive rather than worn down. Afterward, Azura invited me and a few others to the cafe at the corner. The place was cozy and full of books stacked on the windowsills. Bram was already there, waving from a corner table with a slice of pie waiting for me. "You'll like the apple," he said when I sat down. He asked me about the hike, and I found myself telling him about the morning fog in the canyon and how it reminded me of when Griffin was small and we'd play outside before school. Bram listened, really listened, and when he smiled at me, there wasn't a trace of pity or judgment, just kindness. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the children's hospital to drop off some books I'd collected from the neighborhood. I'd been volunteering a few times a week, reading to the kids, playing cards with them, helping the nurses refill supplies. I loved walking down those bright halls and hearing the laughter echo off the walls, even in a place full of pain. One little girl, Emily, ran up to me when she saw me. "You came back," she said, throwing her skinny arms around me. "Of course, I did," I said, smoothing her hair. That night, I cooked dinner just for me. Fresh pasta with basil, real parmesan, a glass of wine. I didn't sit in the corner of the table like I used to, waiting for someone to join me or apologize. I sat right in the middle, with a candle lit and my favorite song playing low. When I finished eating, I stood at the window and watched the city lights sparkle against the dark hills beyond. Viremont felt alive in a way my old life hadn't in years. People here smiled at you in the market. They asked about your day and really wanted to know. In the quiet of my living room, I picked up the stack of letters Griffin had sent, 3 in all, and placed them in a small box, along with the photo of him as a boy. I still loved him. That would never change. But for the first time, I understood that I didn't need to sacrifice myself to prove it. Greer called later, checking in. "How was the hike?" "Perfect," I said. "And dinner with Bram?" she teased. I laughed, really laughed, and felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for too long. When I finally went to bed, I didn't check my phone, didn't wonder what Griffin or Sable were saying about me. I slipped between clean sheets and thought about tomorrow's hike, about the kids at the hospital, about the woman I was becoming here in this quiet little town. For years, I'd been afraid that stepping away would mean I had nothing left. But now, I saw the truth. Stepping away had given me everything, and I was just getting started. A few weeks later, the leaves in Viremont started to turn. One morning, I opened the curtains and the hills were painted in gold and scarlet. The kind of beauty I used to think was reserved for postcards, not real life. By then, I'd settled into a rhythm that felt like it belonged to me. Mornings were for hiking or volunteering, afternoons for coffee at the bookshop, evenings for reading or dinner with Greer or Bram, or sometimes just myself. One Saturday, Greer invited me to a little harvest festival at the park. I almost said, no old habits, but I made myself go. The air smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke, and children ran past me with caramel apples in hand. At one booth, Bram was sitting behind a table stacked high with books. "Well," he said when he saw me, "I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." "Not avoiding," I said, "just observing." He grinned. "Come sit with me." I saved you a chair. I spent the whole afternoon there, helping him sell used books to raise money for the library. People kept stopping by to say hello to him. He seemed to know everyone, and every time he introduced me, it was simply, "This is Corinne. She's a friend." It was strange how good that word felt, friend. As the sun began to set, Bram walked me back toward the street where I'd parked. The trees were glowing with the last of the light, and the breeze was cool enough that I pulled my sweater tighter. "You know," he said after a long silence, "you don't have to keep proving how strong you are all the time." I stopped, surprised. "I see it," he went on gently, "how hard you work to make it look easy, to make sure no one sees how much it cost you to get here." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then I looked at him and nodded, because he wasn't wrong. Later that night, back in my little kitchen, I thought about his words, and I realized something. I wasn't just proving it to other people. I'd been proving it to myself. Every step forward here was a way of saying, "I'm still standing, I'm still here." The next morning, I finally opened Griffin's last letter. He'd written more, this time pages full of apologies and memories. He wrote about when he broke his arm at 9, how I'd sat with him all night in the ER, telling him stories to distract him from the pain. He wrote about how he used to watch me dance around the kitchen when I thought no one was looking. He admitted he'd believed Sable because it was easier than admitting how much he owed me. He said he'd left her, that she'd finally pushed too far, and he'd packed a bag and walked out. He ended with this: "I don't expect you to forgive me yet, but I hope someday you will. I miss you, Mom. I miss you so much." I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time. Then I slipped it back into its envelope and tucked it in the box with the others. I wasn't ready to answer yet, but for the first time, I thought maybe I would be someday. That afternoon, I met Azura and a few others for a hike up to the overlook. It was steeper than usual, and the air was crisp and thin as we climbed. When we reached the top, the valley spread out below us like a painted canvas, the river cutting through goldfields, the town tucked into the hillside. Bram was there, waiting. He held out a thermos and 2 cups. "Thought you might need this," he said. We stood there drinking coffee, watching the sun dip behind the ridge. I felt his shoulder brush mine, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't flinch from the closeness. When we hiked back down, the stars had come out scattered and sharp against the black sky. At my door, he hesitated before saying goodnight. "Corinne," he began, then stopped. "Yes, just don't forget," he said softly. "You're allowed to be happy." I smiled. "I know," I said. After he left, I stood in the doorway for a while, looking out at the quiet street. The air smelled like wood smoke and autumn leaves. Somewhere down the block, Greer was laughing with her neighbors. Inside, my little house was warm and full of soft light. I set the hiking boots by the door, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in my blue chair by the window. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who thought her worth was measured in how much she gave up, how much she endured, the one who believed love had to hurt to count. She wasn't here anymore. In her place was me, stronger, quieter, still, learning. I didn't know what would happen with Griffin. I didn't know what would happen with Bram. But for the first time in my life, that uncertainty didn't scare me. For the first time, it felt like possibility. I lifted my glass toward the window, toward the stars, toward whatever came next. Here's to her, the woman I've become, and here's to everything still waiting for me. This story is based on real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identity of the person involved. It's the story of a mother who gave her entire life to her children and grandchildren, only to be discarded, used, and left behind. But when she had nothing left to lose, she stood up, and this time, she lived for herself. We're not telling this story to judge anyone, but to make people stop and think. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? Now I'm curious about you, the one listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever gone through something like this? Let me know in the comments. And before you go, I'm leaving 2 of the channel's favorite stories on the end screen. Both will surprise you. Thanks for staying with me until the end.